Progress update on WRXmini Rex. Nice little bit of dust there. So I've done a fair bit since last time I think on the video. A lot of welding and grinding pretty much. I think the grinder and the welder have got a decent work out so far, and I don't know where you're halfway, but you can see that I've added in a cross brace for the centre of the car. That's all welded in now. I haven't welded to the body yet. It's all still tacked in. The chassis rails that you can see that I had in there last time they're tacked in, they're actually all tacked in now, but they're all fully welded up but tacked to the chassis rail, tacked to the body. So the engine's sitting in the right position. Since last time I've put in a cross brace for the chassis rails to hold them apart. It's got a couple of purposes. It's being used to obviously keep the chassis rails apart and strengthen that like a top brace or a strut brace. But it's also going to hold the struts. So the struts themselves or the coilovers are going to mount down the bottom there, and they're going to come up to here where I'm going to add in a bracket to hold it. Also the top engine mount or stabilizer, that's going to mount here as well, a little bit higher. I'm going to take that out, probably put in a shorter one and put it just in front of that cross brace, and that stops the engine from rocking back and forth. You can see that I've also mounted in the rear engine subframe mounts. So they're welded to the engine subframe, bolted to the chassis rails with those brackets which are welded and tacked on. And then you've got the upper control arm, which I'm just running a plate at the moment. Haven't really trimmed any of it down. I'm going to put a lot of gussets in this subframe, so it's going to gusset sort of everywhere to strengthen it and make it even more stable. Just getting that right height for the upper control arm was a bit of a challenge, but that's been quite good. Did the engine mounts as well. So the engine mounts, the subframe mounts, they're tacked in, ready to go, using the same engine subframe bolts as the WRX had, so it's pretty much just mounted the same way other than the brace that I've made. That'll be welded all the way around the top of the chassis rail, you can see there. You can see the clearance. Interesting part, which has always been the really challenging part with this, is that clearance there in the top or the upper control arm and the exhaust. I really didn't want to modify the engine. I don't want to move the turbo. I want to keep the engine as stock as possible, custom subframe, and try and just keep everything fairly standard. So that way, if I ever need to replace anything, I don't have to try and find Frankenstein parts everywhere. So I try to do it that way. So they'll just bolt in. I'll probably just weld bolts. I'll weld a couple of nuts in there and bolt it in from up underneath. So everything's bolted from underneath. It'll be nice and simple. You can see that the drive shaft will have a fairly big angle, I guess, down. It also has an angle coming back towards me on the outer CV, which is only minor. It's not too bad. It's pretty much in line. But this one here, the wheels will go up another inch, or the car will go down another inch, so that'll reduce and come down. Even if it with a bit of droop, if you go over bumps, it'll actually still clear because it is long enough between the two that it's not going to hit on the couplings or anything like that. So the other thing, I wanted to keep this engine up higher. Minis can sit quite low, so I wanted to keep it from hitting the ground, I guess you could say. So I've got the suspension, it's on a slight angle down, which is exactly where I wanted it. It will, like I said, go up an inch, and that'll still keep it on a downward angle from the centre out. But the clearance underneath is going to be perfect. It's going to be something like 140 mil. Even if I drop it down 20 mil or another inch, it's still 120 mil, 115 from the ground. Minis can sit below 100 in most cases, and I just don't want sump damage, all that sort of crap. The last Mini I had was really low, and it just made life difficult. You can't go for speed humps, so I just want to make this one a little bit better. So yeah, that's pretty much the update at the moment. I guess most people have a whiteboard and write down their notes. So I guess I've been using the back window with a white texter, and that seems to be doing a good job. I guess that's just a quick look at what I'm aiming to do with the coilovers. So I'll sit there. I don't work out what to do with the anti-roll bar as well. That's a new bit there. I'll cut those two bits of metal off the back as well, where the engine subframe sticks out. So next job to do, or today's job, is basically pull it all apart, pull the subframe out, and start welding up the subframe and the chassis rails into the body of the car. Just making sure that it's all secure and done properly, and then I'll put it all back together before starting to work on the wheel arches. So that'll be probably the next update will be when I do all the wheel arches and everything. So, or maybe once all the subframes welded up. So very good. I'll put some more photos up this time after this and a little bit more detail. Cheers.